Hello, everybody, and welcome to What's the Story podcast. This is WTS 342. My name is Danny Murray.
242, unreal. I'm Graham Merrigan.
I love how after every episode, when we say the number, we we act surprised. We're like, unreal,
Yeah,
amazing.
you have to.
But in fairness, it is surprising. We're going over a decade,
Yeah,
So that's
we're
that's
good
a surprise.
people. We're very good people.
And most of the time.
Most of
Most
the
of the
time, we're
time.
good people.
How are you this week, Graham O'Merigan? Are you well, my friend?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. I've been under the weather with cough and head cold, but yeah, otherwise I'm good. How are you?
I'm very good. I've a week off work. Doing a few things here and there, and just generally resting up and feeling good about it. Went to a brilliant production of To Kill a Mockingbird in the Grand Canal Theatre this week.
Deadly. I
Um,
love the theatre. I don't go enough.
yeah, you and I were privately having this conversation, and we both agreed that while we don't fit the bill of theatre people, if such a bill exists, we definitely want to be more. And off the back of it, then you've actually booked tickets to a theatre show.
I have. I'm going to see the Crucible Saturday week.
Fabulous. The Crucible's absolutely brilliant.
Mm.
I haven't seen this production of it, but I went years ago. As no surprise to anybody, I went down a rabbit hole, Graham, once upon a time on the Salem witch trials. So
Oh
obviously that
yes,
that
and you
bred
were
me.
there as well.
I was in Salem. That's right. They didn't keep Oksana. But apparently those days are long gone. Um,
As hard as you tried.
I did. I tried to convince them and everything. I was like, I'm telling you now, put her in the water. She won't sink. Put her in the water. I'm
Did
telling you.
Did you ever get the compensation from the airline?
Oh, we did. Yeah, eventually we
Yeah,
did. It was. I tell you, it wasn't pleasant, and it wasn't. They made life extremely difficult. Um,
which is
but it was,
surprising.
yeah, very. Um, but no, we did. Look, I had an okay ending and all that kind of crack. But yeah, Salem was mad. We were there, and it was around Halloween time, so
Yeah,
they were really leaning into the gimmick, shall we say?
yeah.
Uh, and it was like, I should have came in July. I think going in July would have been a more enjoyable experience than being there in Halloween.
Right.
I think it actually was. It was either the day before or it was Halloween. Either way, um, but it's lovely. I am. If me and Cubes have often said, um, that if ever we were to move to the United States of America, it would be Massachusetts, and it would be
You're not going
probably.
to move to the United States of
No, of
America.
course not, Graham. But I'm just saying, if that situation ever did arise, that's the neck of the woods I'd want to be. Like, I mean, you didn't have to. You didn't. I mean, come on, like, we're doing a show here, man.
You hate America at the moment.
I don't
You're not
hate
going
America at the moment. I hate the regime, Graham.
the regime.
I am very
Um,
much rage against the machine, not rage against the people and country.
Speaking of regime, you two have announced the release of a politically charged EP called
Yeah,
Days of Ash.
yeah,
And
exactly. Yeah,
they describe Days of Ash as an immediate response to current events and inspired by the many extraordinary and courageous people fighting on the front line of freedom. Like, are
yeah.
they taking the piss or what?
I
Immediate response.
well, yeah, I know. I laughed at that, and I felt. I don't know. I don't know how to react to it. To be honest, look, as I said, I've said it on the podcast plenty times. I am a U2 fan, unapologetically. Right?
Yeah.
I haven't. They've literally released this today that we're recording, so I haven't had a chance. I listened to one of the songs. Wasn't bad. Well, I wouldn't describe it as good, but it wasn't bad. Um, but it's an EP, right? And I think it's a five or six. I think it's five
Six,
song.
yeah.
I think it's five songs and a poem,
Okay. Lovely.
which is lovely. Um, but like. The immediate response thing, I kind of rolled my eyes at a bit. Immediate response was Bruce Springsteen, The Streets of Minneapolis, which came out, I think, within 72 hours of Alex
Kill him.
Alex Wood being killed by ICE agents. That you could classify as an immediate response. We're speaking to people who this week who have worked and been, you know, at the heart of humanitarian work in some of these conflict zones and whatever, and they've been raging for quite a while. So to call it an immediate response just feels a bit like,
It's a bit
lads, come on.
ridiculous, is what it
You know,
is.
I mean,
And
like,
they referenced like in the news report I read, it said, such situations as Gaza, Ukraine, like Gaza and Ukraine are going on years, like.
yeah, and look, I don't want it to be. Look, I don't want to poo-poo. The whole thing, right? The word immediate is what kind of I was like, fuck off.
Are they
But
profiting from it or is it going to charity?
I don't know right now. It's the honest answer. I said they released it today, like a couple hours before we start recording. Um, it does take aim at the likes of Putin, Netanyahu, ICE. Like it's so from that point of view, I'm like, yeah, sounds about right. It's the first new material they've released in like what 9 years. Well, they've had the odd song here or there, like that Atomic City one, which wasn't bad. Um, they had that residency in Vegas in the Sphere, and in the couple of things that they've done, I don't think they re-released, but they certainly reworked the song "Walk On" to be more pro-Ukrainian and kind of trumpeting Zelensky. So like the word immediate, like I don't want to be pedantic and take, uh, you know, distract from what is actually probably a good message and probably a good thing that we're seeing a global act and you would say a global heavyweight in the music industry having something that's politically charged like this and coming out with it and actually, saying we're not we're not being ambiguous here. We are unequivocally against what we're seeing in the world. For that, I'll give them credit.
Yeah. Anyway, um, will we go to our guests, Daniel?
You seem reluctant, Graham, to give any kind of.
No, I just think it's opportunist. I think like you said with Bruce released something within two days or so in
And has announced a No Kings tour in America, by the way, as well.
yeah,
Which, you know,
so I'm not look, I just think they're not probably more so Paul Hewson is more like in quotes humanitarian and stuff like that wants to be called that, but when the start of the Palestine Israel
hmm.
onslaught in Gaza, they were nowhere to be seen. Like they actually they actually paid tribute more so to Israel, at the start of that.
Yeah,
Without kind of just giving it a couple of days and seeing the facts or whatever like
but
that.
right, and I'm gonna sound like I'm trying to defend him here. And look, I'm not. I want to be very. I think as the most outspoken member of the group, I think Bono made an absolute hames of that whole thing, and I think he's been trying to backtrack and kind of twist and turn and kind of, move in mysterious ways, if you'll allow me a pun, to I could have used an acrobat pun that was more obscure and to the heartland of YouTube fan. Anyway, um I think he's been trying to almost shift things around. I know he's spoken negatively Netanyahu before, but I think he got this one right. He read the room wrong. He read the situation wrong and focus too much on Hamas as opposed to the humanitarian bit, which is basically
Absolutely.
rather it doesn't matter, like two wrongs. This is a man who famously, after the London 7/7 attack, said you can't become a monster to defeat a monster, and yet he seemed perfectly fine with one monster doing what it was doing to Palestinian people because there was a monster in Palestine, as he would call Hamas, let's say, right? So I think he got that bit completely wrong. But I think the reactionary bit, like that's the world we live in, right? Like after the October 7th attacks, people just reacted because everything is an instant now. There's no time to digest if you're not reacting in the moment. And I think it's very difficult for anyone who has a global platform, particularly if they're going on stage or if they're doing an event or if there's something that's happening within 24 hours, something like that happening. There's almost an expectation that there's going to be a response, that there's going to be some sort of comment on it. And in the immediate aftermath of anything like that, you're never going to have all of the facts. You're never going to have, and I'm going to make a very clunky, awkward, difficult segue that doesn't quite fit. But my it's the only thing that's coming to my brain right now as something that could give an example of that we can kind of use in our language as wrestling marks, right? Reacting to something when you don't have all the information. One of the greatest examples of that is the Chris Benoit situation,
Yeah, yeah.
when in the first 24 hours, the tragedy
So
and WWE themselves put out a special program
it was a
honoring him
tribute. It was a
and a
tribute.
tribute to him. And then as all the facts emerged shortly after that, oh, hang on a second. Chris Benoit was after doing something absolutely like the worst thing, like it was a murder suicide.
Mm.
Suddenly that tribute looked absolutely, it aged like fucking milk left in the sun. So I think that the example or the point I'm trying to make with that is that we, as just society generally, react in the instant.
That's some
And
reference.
I tell you, man, I don't know how my brain, but it did.
How
Plucked
does
it,
your brain go to Benoit?
fucking plucked it. Uh, I'm twisting myself around here to try and explain what I'm getting at, which is essentially I will give Bono or anyone a little bit of grace in terms of reacting to something immediately because that's how the world is these days. But I give them zero grace and I give them zero wiggle room in the many, many, many months that have passed since, and the failure to correct the
Years.
record, and yeah, and the failure to correct the record, and the failure to say just because that wasn't right doesn't make all this right,
Yeah, exactly.
and that's where they fucked up.
Big
Anyway,
time.
that is a very long digression and a very long waffle and intro. And if you're still with us, which I hope you are, we do have a good show for you this week.
Yeah.
We have a really good show for you this week. We have Alex Brock and Niamh Foley joining us. Mero, do you want to tell us a little bit about Alex and Niamh?
Alex and Niamh are two humanitarians working on the ground in conflict zones. I know Alex because his sister is a dear friend of mine who married a dear friend of mine, Shane Fitz, doing
An
bits.
absolute gentleman. I think Shane's name is being mentioned. He might have enjoyed that weird man, my ability to get that weird wrestling reference in as well. Shane's name has probably been mentioned in this podcast a couple of times over the years, and every time the word gentleman quickly follows.
Yeah, Shane has been listening to us since day one. But I texted Kathy there a couple of weeks ago and I said, "Hey, Alex would be interesting for the podcast, wouldn't she?" And she said, "Absolutely." So I don't know why I didn't think of it sooner because I've known them for years. So, and I've known his work. I've always been interested. Anytime I'm at these family gatherings, I kind of ask him questions and stuff about it. So, um, we are delighted to have Niamh Foley and Alex Brock, two humanitarians, with us, joining us right now. So joining us now is Niamh and Alex, two beautiful humanitarians. How are you today?
Hey guys, thanks for having us on.
Hiya, it's a
Hi.
bit cold here in Kyiv, but doing good, thanks.
What's the temperature in Kyiv now, Niamh?
Uh, it's actually a little bit warmer than it was last week. It's -8 right now.
Oh,
I'm not kidding you. We were getting down to -20 at some point. So loving the balmy -8 temperature at the moment.
no way. Oh my God.
And Alex, you're in Kenmare, hopefully a touch warmer than -8 at the moment.
It's absolutely tropical compared to Kyiv. Yeah, absolutely lovely.
Good stuff, guys. So look, we'll start at the start, I guess. And Alex, we might start with you first. Tell us a little bit about the humanitarian side of things that you guys have got involved in, and maybe how you got involved. And then Niamh, we'll go to you for the same.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so just from my kind of side of things, I've kind of been working in development in Ireland here and kind of education programs, and then really for the last 10 odd years, and in the kind of NGO sector here, and then kind of gradually moved in towards more humanitarian work. So previously I would have worked in kind of India and Zambia, and then I worked more so on humanitarian protection, so in Palestine, and then I moved to Vienna for a couple of years. I ended up with an Austrian humanitarian organization, and I was then kind of deployed by them to Ukraine for 2 years. So I've just returned to Ireland there not long before Christmas. And yeah, so I was in Ukraine for 2 years and then met up with Niamh and the rest of the kind of small but like really active Irish community over there, who also are kind of, mostly in that kind of sector or that sphere of work, humanitarian, some kind of government people, some guards, stuff like that, doing work over there, kind of in and around the kind of civil impacts of the war over there.
And Niamh, you were saying you've been, before we hit record, you're based in Ukraine now for a number of years.
Yeah, so I started out in my early 20s doing internships. I started on the West Bank, then spent about 5 years in the Middle East between Yemen, Iraq, and Iran. And then April 2023, I ended up in Kharkiv in the east part of Ukraine. Spent about a year and a half there, and now I've been in Kyiv for about a year as well. So by the time I came in, Alex and the rest had already set up the Kyiv Gales. So I got to see the benefits of the year's work that they put in.
The two of you is like the two of you are just attracted to conflict zones, is it?
Chaos, maybe. What do you think,
Yeah.
Alex? But I think, for me, I think it's a bit of the way that you're raised in Ireland is about kind of community activism, and you always see things for Tropra and different organizations. So for me, I think that's kind of like we're taught from a young age about getting involved and giving back. So I think that's for me how this kind of started off. So I mean, we see a lot of Irish actually in the humanitarian sector, quite large numbers compared to the size that we have. So I think I think we're just two of a much more representative figure of people traveling around the world doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Like
Yeah.
pound for pound, Ireland tends to show up all the time when you hear those kind of figures of countries that are either donating or like that they're actually on the ground
Exactly.
supporting and helping. Alex, for you then, in terms of like you said you got involved in an Austrian humanitarian organization, they asked you then to head over to Ukraine. What was your first impression then when you hit the ground in Ukraine?
Yeah, I think like even but like just to go back to that to Graham's point, like I've had that kind of said to me before by like friends and family, like, oh, you must be you some kind of adrenaline junkie, and like that couldn't be further from the truth. Like, although working at Baker's Corner for several years earlier would definitely spike your adrenaline levels sometimes. But I think, as Niamh said, it's just there's something about that kind of a need to kind of look things straight in the eye and kind of say, right, look, we're not going to change the world, but at least we can put our shoulder to the wheel in a way that pushes things forward a bit. And like I've kind of come, to see things slightly differently as well over the years working in this sector. Like, and it doesn't have to be over there or wherever there is or wherever the cause that is close to your heart. Like you can do that in your own place, in your own way. And so many of the issues that we see cropping up, for example, in Ukraine, albeit in a much more pressurized situation, are present in Ireland and are present in our own communities: inequality, class, lack of services, like the effects of capitalism and environmental destruction. So like there are things you can, Bernadette McAllister put it like just so succinctly. She's like, you dig where you stand, like, and I think that's the most important thing, that wherever your issue is or your community is, that you kind of just keep your eye on things and yet don't let in your own just small way, don't let the wool be pulled over your eyes in some ways. So that's certainly my reasons, I guess. But yeah, so sorry, Danny, to get back to your point, like the first thing, I guess the good thing, or the kind of the thing that gave me most peace of mind when I was preparing, getting ready to go over there, was like I was working in an organization that was really good at what they do. They had huge, not so many resources, but huge experience working in very challenging environments. So like the preparation work, the kind of the training you do, even just the mental preparation of knowing where you're going, what's going on, what to expect, meant that once I arrived in Ukraine, like, you had a reference point, you had a kind of touchstone to go, okay, this is happening, this is what I have to do now. And that's not to say it was easy or is for anyone who goes there, let alone the Ukrainians who are living there, or even who are around the world and watching things from afar. But yeah, I mean, the first, just on a surface level, like the first things you notice is like, you get off the train in the train station and there's military people, and they're saying goodbye to their loved ones, or they're coming back, or they're moving. And it's, especially from an Irish context where we're really not used to seeing, thankfully we don't have a kind of militarized society or police force, like just those kind of visual elements, surface level elements, were really kind of, jarring. And then, of course, it's like, oh yeah, of course we're here, and yeah, I mean, apart from, especially in Kyiv, I don't know, Niamh, if you'd agree, but like, there is a lot of, like, despite this extraordinary situation, life goes on. Like, you walk down the street and there's cafes open, there's restaurants open, people are going to work. Like, what was remarkable to me was just, in many ways, how every day life goes on. And if you were watching the news every day from here or anywhere else, that wouldn't be the picture that you would have. But so there were pole opposites at every kind of turn in the experience. Yeah.
It's interesting, because I was going to ask Niamh about kind of what is the day-to-day experience there, because as you said, like, we're all watching through our screens, right? Be it on our phones or on TV. It's a constant source on the news here, and it's, the volume gets turned up or turned down depending on what stage of peace talks or what stage of whatever is happening, or if Vladimir Zelensky is visiting Ireland or visiting wherever, you kind of, the news pays more attention to it. But obviously, Niamh, for you, or Alex, when you were there and you are on the ground and you are there day to day, like what Alex is kind of describing there might maybe surprise some people, that the resolve of the Ukrainians is just to try and live life and try and get on with things. Businesses still have to open, people still have to go about their day to day stuff. Like, so what is that day to day experience like?
So it's Alex and I have discussed this before. It's very hard to tell you that so many of these things are true at the same time. So now, for example, with the winter, so I haven't had heating since the 9th of January, and my water just came back today. But I've been quite lucky with my electricity, right? And that's not the case for other people. In Kyiv, for example, I often think of elderly people or people with small kids. So my lift in my building doesn't work. So it's 5 flights of stairs up and down, which, good bit of exercise for me, but it's not so easy for others, and those are kind of the less sexy or less impressive stories, but that's kind of the reality of what we're dealing with. At the same time, we go into the office every day, and I think there's a kind of an unspoken feeling of we can control the atmosphere in the office and our relationships and how we feel about the day in the office, and that's almost like our protection for my team against what's going on outside of that. But there are still concerts on, the opera is still open. It's very hard to have this view, but it really is a case of sometimes you're sitting in a lovely cafe, you might be having a pint of beer from a local brewery, and you're looking at a building that has been hit by shaheds, by drones at the same time. So it's hard for us also, especially when we have very intense nights and you can hear a lot of explosions and you can see the air defense. And then you wake up the next morning and you can go in and you can get your almond latte, for example. Like, it just doesn't feel like it should be the same place. But there is also a sense of being a foreigner here. I don't have my local village, and I don't have my local community, and I don't have my family here. So I'm, even living in Ukraine, I'm quite privileged compared to a lot of other people who have family members on the front line, who, whose windows get blown out of their buildings, which we've seen happen for some of my colleagues and my friends. So it's almost surreal in a lot of ways to, this will happen to someone, their windows get blown out, and then they'll still go to football training the next week, or they'll still go to the gym or their dance class. So I think the resilience that I've seen here in the nearly 3 years that I've been here it's remarkable. And I think the news often tries to find a way of capturing something that's so intangible by showing, people having dance parties at minus 10 degrees or skating on a frozen river. But I know it's very difficult even for me with my family to kind of capture all the different walks of life that you see here, and how the conflict and the bombing and the propaganda affects that as well.
And in terms in terms of the job, what is the day-to-day of the job? Niamh.
Do you want to go first, Alex?
Sorry.
1 second. Sorry, I'm a bit sick.
No problem.
From my cold apartment. So for me, I work in an NGO, and I work in safety and security. So my major role within my organization is to try and enable our teams to get out to the people who are most in need in different counties, or we would call them oblasts, across the country. So for me, my organization does social protection support, like legal advice, like PSS, psychosocial support. We do repairs of people's homes. We provide cash assistance to people. We do a bit of work on getting people back to livelihoods and getting on the job training. And we also work with a lot of local partners. So for me, it's about how do I support our teams to get out to the communities that they're getting out to in a safe way for both them and for the communities as well. And we have more than 800 people. So I'm lucky I have quite a brilliant team around me here in Kyiv and in our oblast. But it is also boring sometimes. I sit in a lot of meetings. I write a lot of emails. So I think it's a job that can appear quite interesting. And I do love my job. But I also, at the end of the day, still have to write reports and have to analyze data, and I have to sit in long meetings. So, there's good parts and bad parts to every job, I'd say.
Mm-hmm. Alex?
Yeah, like a lot of the same. It's like after all that, you just want to go out and kick a football on a gap pitch and just release some of that tension. But in a very similar way, like my role was based obviously in the kind of headquarters in Kyiv, but with like regular kind of, you would go and visit the site location. So we would have funding a lot from the EU. So EU projects that are funding social protection, basically. Like, so essentially, like, they're saying there's 10 million people, in need of humanitarian assistance in Ukraine at the moment. Mostly along that kind of present oblasts or counties of the front line. But like a lot of them now, at this point, 4 years into the war, are really the most vulnerable that you would kind of categorize. Like, so elderly people that don't have the means or the ability to leave and haven't had since the very start. So it was, we were, for example, running child-friendly spaces, so places where kids could come with their parents, for example, and receive, like play therapy and kind of access child psychologists and that would work with them and their parents and try to process, everything that Niamh said, like living in those environments. And of course, the frontline cities, as they're called, are, much more intense than a place like Kyiv, and Kyiv is heavy at times, so, or, all the time. But like, and then, just those supports, like essentially social protection, like, so people would come to us and maybe they had been, or come to those centres, they might have been displaced as the frontline moves or as different things pop up in their location. They would have to have moved west, say, and so they would get the services along the way, along the road west, and maybe eventually settle in a place like Kyiv or further west, and then there would be further supports like getting them set up on livelihood programs or getting them a small plot of land that they can rent at a reasonable rate and kind of small livelihood projects, and as well, like a lot of that is kind of building up to what will eventually come after hostilities cease in some way. Like, how do you knit back together a society that has so many cleavages and so many so not only the psychosocial elements of conflict, but again along the same lines of class issues. Like, there is a class dimension to this conflict and to the for example, the conscription element. Like, the poorer parts of the country are much more vulnerable to and cities and the country are much more vulnerable to, say, people with economic means to avoid that or pay their way out of it, or all of those issues are happening. And then you have, of course, communities that are there, that left, and all of those kind of things are will bubble or are simmering, and so what the organisations I was with, Caritas, are really, really good at the local level, kind of community building and trying to smooth out those kind of iron out those issues at an early level and lay the groundwork for communities to build themselves up and essentially the kind of country and society to build itself up after hostilities as well, after hostilities cease.
And for you guys, so you kind of mentioned there, Alex, in terms of, like, sometimes the best way of de-stressing after all that is getting out on a pitch and kicking a ball. And Niamh, you mentioned the Gaels there a minute ago. Tell us a bit about this. And so obviously there's a small Irish community there, and kind of you have brought together through, and full disclosure, I wouldn't be a big GAA fan at all. But GAA is kind of what's brought the Irish community together in Ukraine and Kyiv. Am I picking that up right?
Like, it started off as an idea, something, or can you imagine getting a team and bring them to Ireland, or a team from Ireland coming over and playing here, and then it was kind of like, actually, let's just see, So it was a real, it was a real kind of like education for me in just like what is possible to move something forward, and how actually people respond to, like, here, I've got this idea. Do you think we can do something? And people come out of the woodwork and try to help. And so ultimately, we just said, right, we're going to try to set up a club here. And the Irish community at that point was like, there's not many, maybe 30 people in Kyiv. And we were kind of like, look, it might bring people together. It might be a kind of a focal point for people to come together. And so at the time, I got onto a friend of mine when I was in Vienna, and I was involved in the Vienna Gaels over there. I emailed just this generic, European GAA thing saying, look, I'm in Kyiv, I want to set up a club, what do I have to do? It turned out it was one of the lads from the Vienna Gaels. And he goes, oh, geez, Alex, no bother, I got you set up. I have to talk to one of the lads in Brussels who runs the whole thing. And he sent me off to him, and again, a development officer or some kind of generic title. Turned out it was a fella from Dunleary who I played with his sons in Coola. And so there's all these kind of just, serendipitous connections. And once you put it out there, people they were just brilliant. They really supported us. And then again, like when it came to going to the Irish community in Kyiv and saying, look, we're going to try set this up, people were like, look, I'll get on board. I know a fella who will sponsor, get you a set of jerseys or whatever. Like, so then the ball just started rolling, and or it just snowballed really from there, is what I want to say. And then, of course, like, people were telling their colleagues in work, and people were coming down and trying it for the first time. They're really curious, what's this game? And so I think, Niamh, we were looking at it at the end of the year, because we had to kind of do our report, and it was we had 42 sessions, like game football sessions, over the course of 2025, with 60 people who played from 15 different countries. Like, so from an idea, it just kind of slips out of your hands and becomes something, a beast of its own, like, and it was lovely to see it progress.
Yeah,
And I think one of my big surprises is the large South American contingent that seems to have just taken off. So we've got we the training sessions are being done partially in Spanish and English, more so than in Ukrainian. And we're hoping now later on in the year that we'll be able to do it through different languages. So I think we've probably got like six, seven at the moment from the Latin and South American contingent who are raring to get back out on the pitch as soon as possible because it's a bit cold at the moment. But yeah, we'd love to do one Oscuelga. We'd love to do a session in Ukrainian and do one probably in Spanish as well. So I think we've got people from Ecuador, we've got Canadians, we've got of course Ukrainians, we've got some Aussies thrown in the mix. So we really have like quite a good spread across a lot of random different countries. So I wouldn't say they're all GAA fanatics by any means, but I just think that I've played with other GA clubs as well. I used to play in the Netherlands for a bit, and I think there's just something about the approach that you take to the club where it's a bit of crack, you have a kick around, nobody takes themselves too seriously, and then sometimes we'll go for a pint after, or we'll do some sort of social event. We're hoping to. I hope this doesn't make it the cut if we don't do this, but we're looking at potentially doing an Irish dancing class because there's a Ukrainian school over here that does that. And we've got a pub quiz coming up. So I think the GA has been just a really good engine for pushing together this community of both internationals and Ukrainians. And like Alex often says to me as well about people coming back from Ireland because there's so many Ukrainians in Ireland now that when they come back, that maybe they want to stay connected to Ireland and they can come and join us here as well. So I think it's we're just we're just in the second year of it now, but I just see a lot of potential for this. Like, and as hopefully when the conflict ends, hopefully soon, then there's a lot of room and growth and potential for the club to really take anchor longer term in Kyiv, I hope. Like 10, 15 years down the line, hopefully have as long of a time running as you guys do with your podcast. That'd be a dream. So it's really, I think it's the first year I think was very tough. I was in Kharkiv for most of that. But the committee really put in the work and we're already seeing some of the benefits of that. And it's really kind of taken on a life of its own really and become quite a nice little community. And hopefully we'll get beyond the 60 members this year as well. I think it's looking quite good. So it's quite cool to be part of a group like this, especially with how hard the day-to-day can be. It's just a very reassuring space to have. And it's nice to chat about something that isn't the war as well sometimes and just have a kick around and have a laugh when you don't score the goal you should have. So for me, it's been a real great like community space to have to chat to Ukrainians about what we do in Ireland, how we live, to talk about our culture. So I hope at the end of this speech, Danny, that you've been converted to GA when you come over to visit us in Kyiv.
not quite. Alex mentioned Kula there, and growing up in the borough and playing for one of the local football clubs. I'm using the word football deliberately there. Uh, Kula were almost seen as the big evil because they got everything and our little football club got nothing. So you could call it manipulation of children, but we were all almost brainwashed into thinking they got everything we got. So it's just stuck with me all these years, and I'm not big enough a person to let it go. Um, yeah, you mentioned there, Niamh, that like, and it's kind of look, it's a lovely thing as well, right? Like we've had a guy called Philip O'Connor on this podcast many times, brilliant journalist. He's based in Stockholm, and I know he's heavily involved with Stockholm Gales and has been for, I think Phil's in Sweden what like 20 years or so, Mero, is he? Like
20,
he's
25 years, yeah.
and every time he's on the podcast, he uses it as an opportunity to mention it. And I'm not sure if it's a rib at this point, but either way, he does. So
Hmm.
it's definitely something, and like you touched on it there, that Netherlands, Belgium, Austria, like the GAA, in fairness to it, it does community really well, and it gets into every corner it possibly can. Some might say that's a cult, not me. Some, but it definitely has that ability of bringing people together. So when you guys are describing that, what sounds like a very normal, beautiful social moment, despite the fact that the backdrop is, a day earlier there could have been drone attacks or there could have been bombs falling. It's surreal, but it's a really kind of sweet and beautiful surreal. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think like just as Niamh said, it was really important to us when we started that it was not a competitive space. Like it was not, we weren't there to be excellent, athletes or like, like, and I think growing up in those spaces and kind of being sporty at a younger age, like I kind of left in my mid 20s, really, like at that kind of space, and I was like, Jesus, I just don't want to go back into that. And actually, what I didn't see then was everything around it. Like it was quite short-sighted of me in many ways because it took me going abroad and being with other clubs, and particularly the Vienna Gales, like where a model of community building was at the very center of what they were doing. And I would say it was there in Kula and is in Joe's and all sports clubs that we know and love. But sometimes, yeah, certainly when I was younger, I didn't maybe see that as much. But like clubs like, Naguil Erica now outside the LGBTQ club in Dublin, like the things that they are doing to like break kind of, stigma and consensus and really break down barriers for people to show that there's another way of doing sport and doing, using sport as a vehicle or as a vehicle for like greater social and community building issues. And actually, when we set up the club and we started talking back to people in Kula, like there was a great initiative that was set up about 25 years ago now, by Damien Byrne, who was the postman in Sallynoggin. He's from just down the road from Joe's, but was like, never fell into their cult orbit. But their family was just this mad Gaff family in the middle of Sallynoggin. But anyway, so he was the local. He put forward this initiative through Kula at the time called the Sports and Social Integration Project. So that was again using sport, going into areas of the borough that were typically not GAA focused, but maybe had some, into deaf schools, like challenging areas where maybe they never would have had an opportunity or to play Gaelic games. And that expanded then, and he started working with prisoners. He started working with folks seeking refuge. So he's working now with communities to bring them in and have it as a fun, kind of enjoyable experience, and not this kind of hard kind of thrust of competitive of competitive sport, like because you can just build so much more around that when people are coming to it and leaving from it with a smile on their face, and that they've connected with people in some way. And so we're hoping that we're doing a small part of that in Kyiv.
It certainly sounds like it. I also love how this episode of the podcast is meant to be talking about Kyiv, but we managed to bring it to the border and make it as local as possible for Maron. Possibly can. And Niamh, you're probably
There's
sitting
always
there
a
going,
connection.
"What?"
It'll never see you.
Yeah.
And
Niamh, do you want to plug your hometown, your
Not
local?
from Walkinstown.
There
That's
you
all I
go.
know. I was raised
Yeah.
in Tipperary. I that's
It's
I'm
it's
lost.
now it's only a half hour down the road from me. I'm in Leash these days, so but yeah, it definitely sounds like you are doing that, and you guys have brought something together where people can take their mind off the heavy goings of the world, but kind of have a bit of crack and then leave just a little bit lighter mentally. To kind of bring it back to that heavier stuff though, and Niamh, you mentioned there that like you were originally over in the eastern part of Ukraine and kind of more close to the heavier conflict zone, I guess, for want of a better term. Um, how much of a difference for you has it been then going from there to the capital?
Yeah, it's a good question because you know the cities and the villages see the war very differently. Even in kind of Greater Kyiv Oblast or the Greater County, uh, I heard a colleague telling me about how the village they're from has an hour of electricity a day at the moment, you know.
Jesus.
So what we're seeing in Kyiv is it's hard, but it's really not representative necessarily of like how most Ukrainians
Hmm.
are seeing the conflict. On the other hand, then when I was in Kharkiv last week, and I also went to Sloviansk, which is based in Donetsk, which you've probably seen a lot on the news. And they're having better electricity, water, heating situation. But for example, with Sloviansk, the situation is really deteriorating from a security perspective. And the conflict is coming closer and closer to that city. So you hear explosions quite regularly walking through the city. And one thing I think that I find difficult, and I have to continuously work with my staff to remind other colleagues, is that this is not normal, because it's both incredible and terrifying what you can get used to as a human as well. You know, that it can become so very easily part of your day to day. Like even the temperature that I was saying, like it's a balmy -8, but it's actually much nicer than it was last week, right? So you kind of adapt as a human, which is a wonderful and a terrible thing. So it's quite hard out in the east. You know, we have curfews across the country, pretty much everywhere. A lot of the street lights don't work at night, so that's a concern for some people going out by themselves. So the day to day has just become harder in general, and then on top of that, you have all of these concerns. And for me, I don't like to have my mobile with me all the time, but that's just not an option in Kyiv. There's air raid sirens going off, and I need to be checking in, see what's going on with colleagues if things happen across the country. So it's people are living in a very hard situation, and it still impresses me so much to be almost 4 years and to have this level of resilience and still care for one another. Like the amount of people who rallied around me with my apartment, and I have a full-time job, and I stayed in a hotel the last 2 nights because I just didn't have any water or heating, but I can afford to do that. And still, the way that my colleagues and friends have rallied around me to offer to host me or to kind of help me get a gas heater or whatever it might be. It's interesting to me that despite the continuous hardship, that you really see that empathy and that kind of community feel still happening. And when I got to Kharkiv at first back in 2023, I was the only foreigner for quite a few months in my organization. And it's constantly this question of, do you know where to get to the supermarket? Do you know how to take out money? So it's people going through very hard situations are still able to have that empathy for other people, and that's something you see everywhere. But it's just in such contrast here that it's really lovely to see that even in these really tough times, like people, really do see the best of people in often the most horrible situations.
Yeah.
And I'm just so impressed that that exists at the same time, despite the grind of the day-to-day war,
You mentioned there that like it's coming up in 4 years. Like, what's the thoughts towards like the possibility of peace? Do people feel like it's coming, or do people feel like there's no end in sight for this?
I think it's quite mixed. Like Ukraine's the biggest country in Europe, so it's massive. Like even taking the train out, it takes about 12 hours to get from Kyiv to the border by train, running at like 120 an hour. So it's just a really massive country. So there's a lot of different opinions, and they generally say like the Dnipro River kind of splits the west from the east, and the west tends to be more kind of Europeanized, and the east tends to have more kind of influence from Russia and Soviet times. So there's a whole mix of feelings and opinions, and soldiers might have one opinion or another opinion, and people with small kids or elderly people. There's just so many different feelings. I think everybody would like for the war to end, but I think what people are willing to give up varies quite dramatically. So I know that publicly it's been said that the Russian Federation would like to take the Donbass, which would include all of Donetsk Oblast, And I know many colleagues that are from there that would not that would never be happy with a deal like that. There are people who just want the war to end at whatever cost it takes at this point. And for me, it's, especially as a foreigner, it's not something I pass judgment on. Um, but it is there's no real one feeling about how things should go across the
Yeah.
country. I think everyone's in agreement that they want it to stop, but how that would look would be quite different.
It's interesting because we've like when you're saying about kind of it varying and the Russian Federation or the Russian side of negotiations, whatever, saying that they want to take the Donbass and kind of you mentioned it there because perhaps or the argument being people on that side of the river, Luhansk, Donetsk, that Mariupol, I think as well as it. I'm not,
It's in
but
Donetsk, yeah, yeah.
like they possibly feel more aligned to Russia or whatever or former Soviet bloc. But as somebody else described it from a Ukrainian point of view, it's like somebody breaking into your house and saying, "Okay, you can have your house, but we're taking your living room." It's like that kind of thing, and you're being asked to give something up. Like for us, thousands and thousands and thousands of kilometers away, it probably sounds like it'll end the war. Just do it. It's easy. But for people who are living it and people who are in it and everything else, it's a very, very different feeling. Um, but it's
Yeah,
like,
and I think Danny as well. Like we have to kind of also remember these that like there's been so many false kind of
mm,
promises or hopes over the last few years that, and even like, I mean, we're focusing on the full scale invasion that happened 4 years ago, but really things started at this level of intensity in 2014
yeah,
and at that side of the country. And so for a long time, so, and what I had learned from talking to Ukrainian colleagues is like, there was this huge wave of fervor after that Maidan revolution, and the kind of best and brightest minds that the country had, the visionaries, the artists, poets, they kind of signed up and they went in that kind of wave, and now there's been such a drain on the country as well, with people huge casualties, people leaving, like, so it's people are kind of talking about what do we rebuild, what is the type of country that we rebuild when this ends. And like, I think that's going to be such a key point. Like, and of course, any society that demobilizes huge numbers of combatants as well and people coming back, and how do you bring that all back together is going to be really important. And I think I also kind of hesitate or maybe caution that kind of simple brushstroke of, yeah, more influence or more maybe aligned, because I think like really there has been such a coming together nationally, no matter where people are in that country or what
mm,
their background or their linguistic background or whatever, like they have come and really what's the word, coalesced around this need to rebuild a society that is better than the one that was kind of before. And yeah, and what I would say is like they are or being forced, or they have been forced under huge pressure to kind of like barriers have broken down within that. Like you'll see that like leadership along different levels of society, community leaders, like even political leaders, military, like they're young, like they are, you know, they have unfortunately through this duress have gained experience in unimaginable ways of how to get things done and lead and build communities, strong, resilient communities. That there is a lot of hope there in Ukraine and how their society has mobilized since 2014 and even before. That I think there is a lot of hope that they will be able to really recreate something very, very
mm,
good for themselves. Yeah, that they can all benefit from.
absolutely, yeah. And then Alex, for you, obviously you mentioned there you're back in Ireland at the moment. What does the future hold for you? Will you be going back over, or is there a new calling for you?
I don't know, Danny. I'm still figuring that one out. I think, I think I loved, despite the situation, I really, really found a lot of purpose in that work and doing that work. But for me personally and like politically, I think there's a lot to be done in Ireland, and I
Mm.
feel like there is work to be done and really great communities that I can get involved in here. I think the pull of home was very strong to come back. So for now, I'll be here. Doing what I don't know, but I think that I don't know. I don't know, Danny. It's a hard one to put my finger on, but I'm just kind of I'm relieved. I think the work that we do and need, like, I'm sure you've seen it as well with friends, is like it's kind of a cumulative like build up of pressure, and you don't realize until you step back out of a circumstance like that, like maybe the impact that it had on you, or just like the pressure you're under, or and so when you catch your breath, it's like, what, Jesus, like actually, or maybe I could have done that better. Maybe I should have done something differently there. So that has been really important, to just take a step back, reconnect with people who are important to me, and spaces and places that are important. So wherever I go, I'm just I carry a lot of that, really, the great experience of working with people like Niamh and all our gang over there, and like I'll take that with me, all the positive stuff, and leave some of the baggage at the door, hopefully.
Before Danny asked the question there, I was waffling away, but I forgot I was on mute. Um, I just wanted to ask Alex and just take it back probably a bit about Niamh. I'll go with Alex first. In terms of the conflict zones in which you've worked, like they're all different, are they? Or like is there number one, it must be daunting to go there, but obviously you guys don't feel probably daunted because it's your bread and butter. Your families probably feel more daunted that you're doing it. But in terms of, say, the West Bank and Gaza and Kyiv, like, is there similarities?
I think, as Niamh said, like one of the major similarities is like just how, despite I can only talk, I was never in Gaza, I can only talk about my time in the West Bank, but like this, if you watch the news every day, you would think that the world is just, and it is in some ways, falling apart and run by pirates at times. But like, what is striking is that even in the most intense circumstances and pressures on people and geopolitical maelstroms that people find themselves in when war comes to you, or when conflict comes to you, or occupation, like people are just ordinary people are just, there's so much more love than there is kind of hate. And maybe that's just, I don't mean to like distill it into such simple terms, but like people are just good to each other, and I think that's the thing that keeps me going, because you see that day to day, like whether it was in Kyiv or in Palestine, like people treat each other just with joy and love and encouragement. Unfortunately, bigger forces fall upon them and come to their door. But it's that kind of solid foundation that communities have or had before that brings them closer together, that they can like they can resist it, and they can see it through. And certainly, that in my experience in Palestine, that kind of Palestinian idea of sumud, or kind of perseverance and forbearance, like just that idea that treat people as you will, and keep going, and we will get through it. And it was really powerful. And I've seen that in or that kind of that concept or that idea in many, many different places.
Niamh?
Yeah, I think Alex has covered it quite well. I think you do need to have a level of fear, right? Like this is not normal where we live. And to be honest, if I have colleagues who are not afraid, that makes me quite nervous. Because they're not reading the situation as well as I would like them to. So um,
Well, I
it's
know
always a
Alex.
case.
Alex has his mother's heart broke. I know that much.
Jesus, you're getting it up from all sides today, Alex. Between the childhood thievery and the breaking of mother's hearts. Jesus. It's a good thing we're not actually related, Alex, because I'd be on you next. We thought at one point Alex and I were related because we've got family from the same village in Kerry. Um, um, yeah, I would agree with Alex about the kind of the resilience. And you do need to understand when you're here that it's not a game. It's not something to be taken lightly. And you also need to decide for yourself if this is an environment that you can live in, right? Which I don't think there's any shame in not deciding that this is not for you when you're coming in to do this kind of work. It's actually probably much healthier than people like Alex and I, to be honest. I think the difference for me I was in Iran when the attempted revolution was happening, when the World Cup was on, and I was in Yemen, kind of at the peak of the humanitarian awareness of the situation. And I think I've never been to Gaza, but Gaza in particular, and those to a lesser extent, are for me places I find it very difficult to feel hopeful. Seeing the way that the world seemed to be working in those countries. I mean, Gaza for me is a place that I would never go to because I don't think I would emotionally be able to manage the heartbreak of that environment. I think for where Ukraine is different for me is that there is this sense of hope, and I have been so impressed consistently with Ukraine as a country and with Ukrainians as people. I think if and when they join the EU, there's going to be a huge amount for the rest of Europe to learn from Ukraine. Very simple things like their trains run on time, which is something we still haven't managed in Ireland. And it might seem like a big deal, but when you're stuck on those trains for 14, 15 hours trying to get out of the country, it does make a difference, and the food they have here is fantastic, and the opera and the ballet performances. There's I think the reason I've probably stayed so long is because I do see a future for Ukraine, being able to go beyond this conflict. So I think that's where places like Yemen and Gaza differ for me, is that I find it hard to manage the lack of hope that I feel there. But my colleagues and my friends here, and the lovely GAA space we've developed, makes me feel like there is an endpoint after this conflict where we come through the other side, and I take my parents on a tour around the country. That's kind of where I hope that things are going. That would be the difference for me.
When you mentioned food there, I was like, yes, bring Verdeniki to Ireland. They need to be in every restaurant, everywhere. They're just fucking sensational.
I think there's a place on Parliament Street in Dublin that's a Ukrainian-owned place, if I remember correctly. I haven't been there, but my dad sends me every article relating to Ukraine that he can find.
Yeah, there's definitely. I think there was two or three. I think there was one Russian restaurant as well up towards Calbrew Street that also did them. But the Ukrainian place does as well. Yeah. I can't remember if it's Parliament Street or where it was, but yeah, Brenniki are just
Graham,
sensational.
just as well, just to jump in, because I know you're probably going to wrap it up, but like I think Niamh and I have spoken about this before in the past, which is like it's seeing, it's, you're kind of asking us how challenging it was or whatever, but like it's always far more challenging for our families and our, the people who love us back home, who are looking and worrying and watching the news and going, was that close to them? And like we have so much kind of, as Niamh said, not only that passport privilege, but like the support of colleagues around us, the support of structures of, security structures that will keep us safe and all of that, like that. But that actually, like, it allows us to be able to like work. Without that we couldn't. And our parents or our loved ones don't have those structures around them to deal with the fact that that we're in a place that is potentially dangerous. And I think that's really important, that it is really always harder on the people back home. And then paradoxically, like, people like Niamh and the Gales community become you become so close with people in such a short space of time, because you're in that kind of pressurized environment, that they become very, very dear people. From my point, for me, I can always speak for me, maybe you would say otherwise, but like, they become very dear. They have become very dear to me, and because you go through that together and you support one another, and you lean on them and they lean on you at different times, and I think that is something very special.
Lovely.
Absolutely.
That's a good way. Like, Niamh, thanks so much from Kyiv. And Alex, I mean, you're trying to free Kerry from the Healy Rays, so that might be our biggest challenge to date.
There's work to be done, Graham. There's work to be done.
There is, yeah, there is, and you're taking on a behemoth there. Talk about a propaganda machine. Um, I suppose it's and it may not be the right way to ask it or whatever, but like, obviously, given the background you guys have, and given the kind of experiences you've had, if anyone listening wanted to kind of support any of the kind of the organizations that are delivering aid, that are supporting people in these kind of conflict zones or whatever, like, what advice would you get, or would you point them in the direction to? Niamh, you mentioned NGO. I don't know if you want to plug your one, or if there's more general stuff you want to, but it feels like one of these conversations should never be wasted, in terms of reminding people that, even sitting on the bus going to or from work, you can always support in some way, shape, or form.
I can jump in there, Niamh, while you're getting your microphone. Look, Danny, again, to go back to Niamh's point, like, it's something maybe that we don't see in the Irish context, is just how mobilized and galvanized Ukrainian civil society is. Like, there are brilliant Ukrainian organizations doing very, very amazing work at a grassroots level. So, like, even getting in touch with someone like Ukrainian Action Ireland, like, they would know those organizations on the ground. Any of the major kind of humanitarian players on the Irish side as well often partner with them. So if you give to, I don't know, let's just say Trogra or Concern, like, they will have partners at a local level in Ukraine that those funds go to, and they implement the project. So so long as it's reputable, you understand who you're giving it to, but like, it will go to very important work in Ukraine.
Brilliant. Ukraine Action Ireland.
Yeah, I think there's a lot that you can do even without giving money as well. Like, there are huge amount of Ukrainians that live in Ireland, and not just Ukrainian refugees. We have Syrian refugees, we have Afghan refugees, and I think even small acts of kindness, can really make someone's day, or their week, or their month. So that, for me, like, as an Irish person here, I have one colleague who will, every time he'll say hello to me, or he'll call me, he'll butcher it, but he'll say Dias Muergas. And I don't have the heart to tell him that it's the second response. The fact that he's made that effort to learn that, so being able to feel at home in someone else's country is a lovely feeling. And I know money is tight for people as well, so that's not always an option, or like volunteering your time, getting involved, even whether it's your GA club or some other sort of club as well. Like, there's a lot of great initiatives that are not financially heavy, let's say. I mean, as Alex says, the CSO experience in Ukraine is like nothing I've ever seen before. There's some really great ones, whether you're looking at some ideas, maybe some evacuations from the front lines. There are some NGOs that go all the way to like 5 kilometers from the conflict line to get people out, who are often elderly people. There's LGBT groups specifically who are focused on helping queer people who can't always stay in kind of these kind of what we call collective sites, these dormitories, because it's not safe for them, or Um, they would, face repercussions if it was found out that they're queer. There's a huge amount of veteran organizations for people who are coming back from the front line and trying to readapt. So I think, as Alex said, there's a good option there in Ireland to plug into, but there's also just so many different ways that you can support. Um, and local organisations are the ones who are struggling for funding more than international ones. So I'd recommend people looking into those options as well. Even learning a few words in Ukrainian to chat to your neighbour. So there's a lot of options out there. So hopefully we've given some inspiration for people.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we absolutely, truly, truly value you guys giving us your time this evening to chat to us. And without trying to sound kind of schmaltzy or cheesy or whatever, like what you guys have done and are doing, it makes a huge difference. And it's always kind of a gentle reminder for people like me who come from very sort of privileged position. And I'm sitting here on a recliner with my central heating working. I lost electricity for all of 20 minutes back when there was a little bit of wind and leash a few weeks ago. But like, hearing what you guys have done and kind of the areas you've worked in and everything else, it, genuinely, one, fair play and thank you. And I don't mean that to sound kind of flippant or casual or whatever, but when you hear people sharing kind of what they've done, it's always just, a genuine reminder of how amazing people can be. So, yeah, just thank you for sharing all that.
Thanks for looking interested. That was nice. Great actors on the other side.
I could have went a lot harder on my GA cult theory, but listen,
You had to
Part
show
two.
some sort of appreciation to GA.
No, I really appreciate
Alex,
it. Sorry, Alex. I'll go quick, and then you can come in and undercut my nice my nice attempt to thank these lads. No, it's been a lovely evening. Thank you for this. It's yeah, it's nice to be able to reflect a bit what's going on here in a kind of a more nuanced way. Even though I think Alex and I would both agree that it's nearly impossible for us to kind of give every angle, and we are still foreigners working here at the end of the day, so don't fully understand the Ukrainian experience. But I really appreciate you allowing us on your very noteworthy podcast. That's won multiple awards according to Google when I was checking last week. So thanks so
amazing
much
what a bit of
for
SEO can
having
do.
us.
Thanks, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure.
A brilliant chat, and a huge thanks once again to Alex and Niamh for their time and sharing their thoughts and experiences with us. Um, just yeah, I'm always quickly enamored by people who do that kind of work.
Absolutely. It was interesting that Alex's Wi-Fi sounded like he was in a current war zone when he was in Kerry, and Niamh's Wi-Fi in Kyiv sounded like she was down the road.
That's gonna give the conspiracy theory that's out there fuel.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But no,
yeah,
it was very interesting. I don't think I would have the cojones to do a job like that, but as they said, like, life goes on and the resilience of people and stuff like that, and they're on the ground trying to support these people through adversity. So
absolutely. And like even
absolutely fair fucks to the two of them
like what
and
Neve,
all their colleagues.
yeah, and like Neve talking about like the stuff she's experienced like Yemen, Iran, obviously Ukraine, and in all of it, the human ability to find resolve and to persevere is nothing short of miraculous. And
Absolutely.
again, it reminds us of our privilege. Uh, you know, I think every so often we all just need to kind of check ourselves a little bit. That way.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
a conversation like that always gives me that moment of
Reflection.
maybe you don't have it so bad because you didn't win your Air Jordan lottery this month, Danny. Maybe you don't have it so bad because you didn't get that takeaway the other night, Dan. Just fucking cool your jets and just
Yeah.
have a little bit of perspective, will you? Yeah.
You were whinging 2 weeks ago, remember? Because you didn't get a takeaway.
I was
And
absolutely, yeah.
the dinner was vile.
It was absolutely putrid. But at least I had. You see, now the perspective is that, well, at least I had food in my belly going to bed, man.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, but 2 weeks ago I was livid.
But look, that was a great interview.
It
And
was. It
if
was.
you want to listen to us, any of our previous episodes, you can go to WTSpod.com. You can search WTS Pod on any podcast provider, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Podcast Republic, Stitcher, anywhere, everywhere you get podcasts, just search WTS Pod. Danny is at Dan John Murray on Instagram. I'm at American Mania. I wish Niamh and Alex all the best. I hope Alex frees Kerry of the Healy Rays, because that will do the whole island all the good. But until next time,
Clear eyes.
full hearts.
Can't.
Can't lose.